Hi, my name is Yana. I'm a modern Ajumma, and as always, I am playing catch up. I mean, not really, but kind of, sort of. I know that it's almost the end of January. I still need to talk about all the books that I read in December before I talk about my favorite books of 2024, before I talk about all the books that I read in January. And I just cannot have my feed show uploads not in that chronological order. So here we go. I read 14 books in December, so we kind of have a lot to talk about. But I also like giving myself some time and some space to really sit with and dwell on these books for a while before I do a wrap up on it. You know, it really shows like which books stuck around, which books have cooled off after like the initial fervor for them. So case in point, the very first book that I read in December was Funny Story by Emily Henry. I really enjoyed the reading experience. I read this as a library audiobook, which was of course read by Julia Whalen, whose hot man voice exudes tingly hotness as ever. This was a very fun read. It was very fast. It was pretty hot. As always, every plot of an Emily Henry book is really not the point, is basically irrelevant, and it's all the little details that stick with you in the end, leaving that lasting impression, such as the sweetness of found family, that bond of regular poker nights with work friends, the very deep emotional bruises of a shitty dad, a leading man character so virtuous he waits for a red light before turning over to you to talk to you in the car while driving. And always, in every single MHen, a pre-coital condom discussion. Very important. And really, those types of things are what is best about every MHen. Like, the female protagonist is always this neurotic, anxious, stuck up her own ass. But the journey of the book, of the story, is in her growth. And the supporting characters are all so positive, so supporting, and healthy. Like, choosing a healthy relationship with yourself over an unhealthy one in a toxic couple. Henry very much prioritizes independency over codependency. Some quotes that I pulled. I feel like there's so much space between who I am and who I want to be, and there's no one to show me how to get there. Honey, she laughs, I'm a cynic. And a cynic is a romantic who is just too scared to hope. Yeah, I really much enjoyed. I think now I've basically read every Emily Henry book, all her main ones. I need to look this up actually first, but yeah, every like big novel of hers, I'm pretty sure Funny Story was the last one that I read. Completing my year of Emily Henry. I guess just off the top of my head, I want to say my favorite one is Book Lovers, because that's the one in like the New York, and she's like the book. It's kind of like a Devil Wears Prada type of thing. And then there's like a really hot library sex scene with no actual sex. Like, Emily Henry, what a tease. I'm not sure where exactly Funny Story is placed on my ranking of MHen so far, but I really did enjoy this one. And I just overall felt like it was a perfectly warm and cozy read for like the beginning of that holiday season. I read Midnight in Chernobyl, the untold story of the world's greatest nuclear disaster by Adam Higginbotham. Basically, immediately after I read Challengers by Adam Higginbotham, I read both of these books as an audiobook. Both of them were read by Jacques Roy, and just like Challenger, Higginbotham uses the same pattern of writing where he lays out the players of the story building up to the event by telling previous similar incidents that ultimately led to the main one. Incredibly written, incredibly researched, impressively neutral storytelling. Just like on a gut level, I might prefer this more, even though I genuinely think that Challengers is like better than Midnight in Chernobyl. I just personally gravitated towards Chernobyl more than I did with Challengers. Maybe it's just the fact that it's so similar to the miniseries Chernobyl. I looked it up. I can't find this book being credited as a source for the series, but it has to be. Like, when I first watched that show, it was so horrifying in every way, in every sense of the word, like body horror, morally horrific. And this is essentially the book version, the non-fictional book version of the miniseries Chernobyl. Like when they talk about the paranoia of the USSR, this is it. This is what they're referring to. All the cover-ups because people were too afraid of losing their positions. And so they just blindly follow orders. Like they don't want to be caught out making the mistake. And so they deceive everybody in a cloud of secrecy that unfortunately the cloud is extremely radioactive and traveling fast. Yeah, I don't even need to recall the body horror visuals from the miniseries to feel so much for the thousands of people who were affected by just a handful of bureaucrats who are so stuck up in their own asses to not wanting to believe that they could have possibly done something wrong. And they were just sitting on their hands trying to pass on the responsibility to the next guy. I also think that I was reading this during the time of like, there was some, was it listeria outbreak at like a boar's head factory? And it was essentially the same situation, albeit on a much smaller scale, but it just keeps this type of thing just keeps happening. And Chernobyl itself, it's incredible that it happened fairly recently, and just what might have been had good people not stepped up, you know, like the leadership that just so happened to be in charge at the time. And it's horrifying to think of accidents, of detrimental incidents occurring on such a cyclical basis with the people who are going to be in charge for the next several years. I shudder to think. Speaking of the end of the world, I read The Leftovers by Tom Perrotta. Overall, I thought that the book was okay. Like after the initial haha of the whole rapture leaving behind the Christians joke, I still found a lot of meat here to chew on. Like every character feels so real, feels so universal, and they're all people who are lost or grieving with or without the rapture. Like I really like what Perrotta did with each character, how he starts them off with that immediate grief of a lost loved one, but then it goes further than that. It's not just about that one person who's lost. It's always about who that character really is on the inside. Like it was never about that sudden surreal event. These characters' introspections are long overdue. Like each character is a study of the most common magnitude, but I loved it. The Leftovers didn't captivate me as much as Little Children did, which I read last month. Couple months ago, definitely a couple months ago at this point. But the biggest sense that I got from The Leftovers is overall, I just really enjoy Tom Perrotta's writing and his quintessential American voice. And I look forward to reading whatever my next Tom Perrotta book will be. Are any of you guys big Tom Perrotta fans? Like I never realized the chokehold he had on 2000s Hollywood. There's so many film adaptations of his books, including The Leftovers, including Little Children. Is Election one of them, I want to say? So whatever other Tom Perrotta book I happen to see at like a used bookstore or whatever Libby has on hand as an audiobook, can't wait. And if you guys have any other Tom Perrotta recommendations, do let me know in the comments. I read This Little Tiny, which is The Wilderness by Aysegul Sabash. It is also kind of about the end of the world, except it's not the world. It is your previous world once you have a child. And just the immediate, in this book's case, 40 days postpartum. This book is all about motherhood. It's all about the 40 days after giving birth. I think it's a memoir of Savash's. This is very much like Rivka Galchen's Little Labors, which is also another tiny book like this, all about life postpartum, like immediate postpartum, and all about her thoughts, mostly frantic, terrified, perplexed, discombobulated. I think Sabash is Turkish, and so culturally, mothers are supposed to stay indoors for the first 40 days, like completely resting. I think that Koreans also do something like this. I have no idea if it's for 40 days or not. I may be Korean, but I am very American. So culturally, I'm just not very aware of this. But there are so many delightful thoughts and stories and anecdotes in this book that I enjoyed immensely. Like the French anthropologist who gets mauled by a bear, and Savas using that analogy to giving birth and forever being transformed afterwards. Like forever torn apart and unsure how the remaining pieces will fit back together. Some quotes I pulled. Is it kind of disorienting how the beautiful quietude of these photos can contrast with the fear and pain and upheaval? I cannot help but think of the invisibility of the postpartum mother, and this is the one that resonated the most with me. I have no words to describe what has happened to me. It's very simple, but sometimes you just don't need much bells and whistles to describe something. I like this a lot. I think that if you just had a baby, this should be a must read for you. If you are a person who is considering having children but are on the fence, you should definitely read this. Otherwise, this just wouldn't be for you, and that's okay. I reread Hercule Poirot's Christmas by Agatha Christie. It was my cheeky little Christmas Day read during that lull between breakfast and lunner. I was really delighted by the preface of her letter to her brother-in-law, who was complaining to her of her anemic, bloodless stories. Like, how rude. And also just overall enjoyed this throughout. If you watched my Vlogmas, I talked about my top 10 Agatha Christies, and this was one of them. Probably why I thought to reread this on Christmas Day. One of the most beautiful aspects of reading Agatha Christie is, well, first of all, she just has so many darn titles, and you can read them all, but you can still forget like what happens in it. And so with every reread, you might not remember, like, oh, did this happen in this one? Or like, what exactly was the answer to this? So each reread still contains its element of surprise, for me at least. And so my nice little surprise in this reread is the wonderfully progressive character of Hilda, who is reprimanding her husband that it is not right to glorify the past, and in fact, it's childish to think so. Yes, always a delight. And then I also read The Seven Dials Mystery by Agatha Christie. This is actually the first time I read this book, and I read it because somebody commented in one of my videos. I'm so sorry, I can't remember which one. Such is the hectic time that is Vlogmas, where I just do not remember what I said in each video, or in which video that I said what in. Nevertheless, someone commented talking about The Seven Dials Mystery. I looked through my Agatha Christie shelves and realized I did not own this copy yet, which probably means that I have never read this before, and I didn't. This was my first time. The first Agatha Christie in 2024. But unfortunately, this is one of her like international thriller romances, which is just not my fave genre that Agatha Christie tackles. Personally, I very much prefer when she keeps it on like some country estate as opposed to some spy escapade, which this was. And overall, I just found it very tepid, despite having a very good opening premise of a group of friends who are all staying in a house and they're pranking each other with a bunch of alarm clocks in someone's room. As always, I love Christie's characterizations in every single one because they feel so grounded in reality. Like, you know, like you've done that with your friends before. And she just gets not necessarily the voices, but definitely the actions and the texture of the characters so well. But yeah, I was more or less forgetting this book as soon as I was reading it. But maybe it just wasn't the right time for me to read this. And so I will reread this at some future time to give it another shot. Speaking of some rather juvenile stories, I read When Digz the Dog Met Zurl the Squirrel, a short tale about a short tale by Chris Pine. Yes, the actor Chris Pine. And it is gorgeously illustrated by Chuck Groening. And really, I just wanted to live in this book. It is so idyllic, such a cozy world. You know, I just want to be this lady reading her book in her backyard with her pets. And as a bonus, the message is lovely. It's about inclusion. It's about the concept of empathy, which sadly seems refreshing in our current bully-proud cultural landscape. Like, some people just want to ostracize and socialize ourselves in structured terms, like very much of an us versus them mentality. And so of course there's inclination to dominate, aka bullying. And of course we don't want to recall our own humble beginnings. I recall Chris Pine's college humor skit during, what was it? It was the Obama era, but it was like the government shutdowns. So his liberal politics has always been a streak in his personality. I just found this very well done. It's very sweet. And I read this during when I rescued my cat. So whether you are a child or have a child or not, if you find this, give it a read. Just go to a bookstore that has a children's section and look for this book and flip through it and luxuriate in this cozy little world with me. Let's talk about the other big book I've got. I read A Place to Call Home, Tradition, Style, and Memory in the New American House by Schafer III. This is the second book of his trio of books and the last of his books for me to read, and this is just all about creating spaces to feel more like home. Having a place of one's own is one of the greatest gifts a house can give its occupants, whether it's a potting shed, a tree house, or just a hammock strung between two trees. These places extend and enrich the experience of living. Oh my God, I loved this little, what would you call it? It's just like when a corner of a house are made up of doors, but I just loved all of his ideas and details, like positioning electric sockets inside medicine cabinets so that you can charge your electric toothbrush without cluttering your vanity. Oh, I love this one. This is a house in the Adirondacks where the clients wanted their house to feel like summer camp, but also still look like a home. And so from the backside, it looks like a summer camp and the backside faces the water. But from the front of the house, it looks, you know, more natural, more like a house. And I love it when houses like this, from the front door, you can see like all the way through the house and that the back of the house opens out into the water view. I absolutely loved his solution to this like huge open space by treating it like a great room, kind of like those British estates where, you know, like in a Downton living room, it's just like that huge ass room. And he put this double sofa situation where one sofa faces the exterior of the house for daytime use, where you can look at the view outside of the water. And then the other sofa faces interior, which is for nighttime use, where you're looking at the fire, but let's be real, we're watching TV on that sofa. It is my dream to one day live in a home that has a great room situation. This dream doesn't have to be realized in actuality, but it's just something happy that my brain likes to think about every now and then. Like, don't look at the furniture, don't think about the colors, just look at this architecture setup. I love this so much. And really, I just love this book so much. All three of his books that I read this year. The writing is simple and direct, where he's explaining his thought process for his decision making. He emphasizes that each project is a collaboration with the personalities and the desires of each client, and the skill and experience, both professional and personal, from him and his team. I love the way that he lays out every book, where every chapter is about something, whether it be a detail or like a project. The photos are gorgeous. I mean, what's not to love? If you have any interest in architecture or interior design and you're more or less Nancy Myers pilled or Barefoot Contessa pilled, I highly recommend Schafer. I read 3 Greek-ish retellings-ish in the month of December. I read Icarus by Ancrum. As a Libby audio, it was read by Kurt Graves. I think this is technically YA, but it didn't feel like it really. I tend to think that young adult territory feels lacking of something, but this doesn't at all. And it reminded me that the best part of YA is that unvarnished yearning. This is like a kind of Greek, very contemporary, queer retelling of a high school student, Icarus, and Helios, who both have shitty dads. I distinctly remember reading this as I was wrapping all my Christmas presents and being so enthralled by the story, mesmerized by how Ancrum like shaped this narrative of, you know, Icarus, who was too ambitious and flew too close to the sun and fell to his doom, but retold as a high school student who is struggling to get by, has too much on his shoulders, and we all just want to be happy with the people that we want to be around. And why does that have to be so hard? Should I make an apple brown Betty? This is the quote that I pulled. But Icarus remembered the way Helios's arm had felt across his throat, remembered his hands being wrenched behind his back, and wondered. Girls are just people like everyone else. Just talk to her. They may have their own tastes about what they're into, and you can't change it if you're not their type, but you don't even know what her tastes are. So don't count yourself out before she does. I remember that quote really resonating with me at the time. Yeah, I really like this. I read The Children of Jocasta by Natalie Haynes. As a Hoopla ebook, I squeezed in my last Natalie Haynes for the year. Unfortunately, I don't think that this audiobook is read by Natalie Haynes, which is the highly preferable way of consuming any Natalie Haynes book. She reads her books so wonderfully. And this one is more of like a straightforward novel from her, bouncing between two timelines of Jocasta and her daughter Ismene. And because most of us are hazy or downright ignorant of who Jocasta is, the plot kind of moves in this very mysterious unfolding. Like, all we really know about Oedipus is that he's the guy who killed his father and married his mother. Why do we not know his mother's name? It's Jocasta. And so this just fleshes out that whole story. Of course, in Jocasta's feminist perspective, of course, with Haynes taking much creative liberties. Like, I didn't know that Jocasta had more children. Of course, the father is Oedipus. During this whole read, I kept thinking of Sisterland by Curtis Sittenfeld. Like, you can hear the same voice, the same themes, but both writers are trying something different in a much darker key. I don't think that it's like a favorite of mine, so it's not really her best, but it's definitely not one to be ignored if you want to be a Natalie Haynes completionist. Yeah, this was interesting. But I do have to say, the best of the three is Glorious Exploits by Ferdia Lennon. I did read it as a library audiobook, which was read by the author. Every time I see that a audiobook is read by the author, I try to consume it in that format as much as possible. I just saw it here and there being recommended by a few booktubers, including Ben of Ben Reads Good, including Ben, who put this in one of his best top books of the year list. And you know, I've had such a year with all these Greek retellings, reimaginings, so completely up my street. However, I was so delightfully surprised at how shocking this felt. Like, it felt so different because Ferdia Lennon is Irish, and he reads it in his very Irish accent. The main character is also technically, where is he from again? Syracusan. He is technically, the main character is technically Syracusan, but sounds, acts, behaves very much in a more contemporary Irish manner. This is equally Greek. This is equally Irish. This is, you know, a contemporary Greek retelling. This is a powerful debut novel with a very fresh voice. All of these are genres that I was very much delving into this year. And so I guess my delightful surprise is the fact that this book just came from left field and ticked off all of those boxes and had me enjoying it throughout as just the cherry on top. Like, I kept thinking of Martyr by Kaveh Akbar. I also found that to be something kind of out of left field, where it just like punched me across the face with its freshness, its urgency, its charming power. And also, like with Martyr, I just don't have that much to say about Glorious Exploits other than like, wow, I'm blown away, you know, no notes. Sometimes that just happens, and that's okay. Tonight we're not drinking to forget, but to remember and dream. It's hope that makes us afraid. But I remind myself that a man should be grateful for his fears, because it means he has something to lose and to win. If any of that sounded appealing to you, I highly recommend this. And also, just if you're in some kind of reading lull, reading slump, this might pull you out of it by giving you a nice friendly punch across the face. I finally read Pizza Girl by Kyoung Frazier. Oh, she's cute. She's fun, fast, sad, sweet, wholesome, creative. This book is that feeling when you're drifting aimlessly, wondering what the hell you're gonna do with your life. I teared up. This is so like tenderly bittersweet, and you can tell from reading the acknowledgements that Frazier put a lot of herself into this novel without it veering into autofiction. Like, I can tell you all about the plot of this 18-year-old pregnant girl who's working at a pizza shop as a low-wage delivery girl who falls in love with a random customer, but all of that is irrelevant. The feeling I'm left with is the encapsulation of the fragility, like whether it be in your early adulthood, which can go so many ways, right? Like, there's so much potential in your life after all of your education, after all of the ways that the people, like the adults in your life, pushed you towards, and that's scary. And there's so much reason to be hesitant and feel stagnant, or not. You can feel that way at any point in your life, young adulthood or not. This is just one of those books that I wanted to clutch tightly to my chest and say, shh, it's gonna be okay. And if not, we'll figure it out together. This book pulled out my inner mom attitude. Like, I just wanted to pet her head. I think I heard a lot of people describe this book as weird, like a weird girl. I guess so. I just didn't really think about that as like top of mind. It really just made me go, aw. Like, it was just more wholesome and more sweet and more earnest and more yearning. But oh, let me tell you about a weird girl. Her name is Rivka Galchen, who wrote Everyone Knows Your Mother is a Witch. The weird girl's name is Katerina Kepler. She is the mother of, oh my god, who is that? Oh, Johannes, the famous 17th century astronomer. As you can tell, I was very much not a science nerd as a child, but yes, this is delightfully quirky, beautifully rendered, pretty funny, and very fast and readable. I think I was reading this after having gone through like so many audio and ebooks that it felt really refreshing to read with my eyeballs again. Every now and then I have to do that. Like, I have so many audiobooks piled up in my, multitude of apps because I, read audiobooks while I'm doing housework, while I'm going on my stupid walks for my health, for my metabolic physical health, and I need audiobooks for those reasons. To the point that I kind of forget about my physical books, and I do feel the need for like a good physical book intervention every now and then. So this was a great use for that purpose, because yes, it's fun, yes, it's an easy read, but it's also sad. It made me feel very small as a human being in this vast world, universe. Like, there's always going to be all these accusers. You can even see their ulterior motives, but what other choice do you have if everybody is against you? We all live in the same world. Like, where else can we go? Like, as I was reading this and having these epiphanies, I was seeing the stars and the heavens and the infinity of life. None of it matters because we all just live and die. And I love when books do that. Like, they may be on the surface level so like flimsy, so I don't know what word I'm trying to look for, but the plot is literally about a real person in the world. Katerina Kepler really was the mother of this famous astronomer who I really know next to nothing about, since I apparently dozed off during every science class I ever took in my life. But this, delightfully fun, charming story still makes you think about the larger world around us, makes you think about how, in the end, it's the little things, as they say, the daily joys that we have in life, like a good cow or a precious granddaughter. For this book, I kept thinking about Lapvona by by Ottessa Moshfegh. Like, both books are the writers saying how deplorable they feel society is, how stupid people are. However, I do feel like if you may not have enjoyed Lapvona, probably because of like its grossness, maybe this might fit better, feel better, because they both are saying the same thing. Galchen is just using less grapes in orifices to get across her point. Some quotes I pulled. Your enemies aren't evil people, but they are your enemies. I wouldn't have thought anything of it, but for some reason, this day I saw that I was walking to the end of my life, and they were walking into their bloom. They were walking toward the center of their lives, and I was walking toward my own perimeter. I've always loved Galchen's writing. I think I've read every book of Galchen that she wrote. I don't recommend all of them because Galchen's writing is definitely not for everybody. It's definitely on the weirder, wonkier end. However, I always found the wonkiness more charming than not. And out of all of them, I would say that this is the most palatable for an everyday reader. And I cannot not mention this stunning cover. Even though I've read all of Galchen's work and I'm very interested in Galchen, if I had not, I still would have bought this book just for this gorgeous paperback copy. I remember the hardcover is like all purple, and that one is also really nice. But I'm so glad that I have this paperback one. It's perfect. It tells the whole story. And last but not least, I finished out the year with There's Always This Year on Basketball and Ascension by Hanif Abdurraqib. So I got this immediately after being shook to the core by They Can't Kill Us Until They Kill Us. That's the title, which was all about music, and it talks about a lot of bands that I either knew next to none or very little about. And so I had, lots of wonderful discussions with my husband, who is a huge music person, and all the music was like right in his era, his genres. And after being so stunned by Abdurraqib's writing in that book, I knew that even though this one is ostensibly about basketball, and that is another genre that I really know nothing about because I'm just not a sports person at all. However, I was so impressed by Abdurraqib's writing just from that one book alone. I place all of my faith in any and everything that he writes, does, that I knew that I had to read everything by him. This came out in 2024. Hence this hardback cover with this $5 off Barnes & Noble sticker. And I was like prepared to ask my husband basketball questions once I was getting into the reading of this. And of course, my husband knows a lot about basketball as well. But I found that I really didn't have to ask him much. I did ask him a few things like, who is, oh no, I can't remember his name. But I just asked him like a few things after finishing a couple of the essays. Like, who is this person? What were they known for at the time? But really, it's, just like They Can't Kill Us, it's always more than just music. It's more than just basketball. It's always about the culture. I just feel like my mind was, like prisming into a higher dimension while reading this. I just couldn't not think of James Baldwin when I'm reading Hanif Abdurraqib, but like the contemporary nonfiction version of a James Baldwin who speaks of his community with so much love, dignity, strength. I also thought of Before Midnight, like how I know that objectively this must be his best one, like his most ambitious, well done book. Just like how Before Midnight is objectively the best in the Before trilogy. But my personal favorite is Before Sunset. And my personal favorite is They Can't Kill Us. Like if Little Devil in America is Before Sunrise, They Can't Kill Us is Before Sunset, and There's Always This Year is Before Midnight. Do you get what I'm saying? And yeah, I just had fun going ham with the highlight. So that is everything that I read in December. Thank you everyone who were following along with my Vlogmas uploads. That was really hectic, but also kind of fun for me to do. It did make me feel just a little bit more comfortable with talking to camera and being more conversational in my videos. And so like after I finished Vlogmas and then after Christmas was over, I was all like pumped up to get this video out. And then of course my kid got sick, and then of course I got sick, And then just January has been such a shit show. Like between the fires and just everything happening in this very long, now memed month of how this January is feeling interminable. I was feeling that on January 1st. Like, it is only because this January is like decades long that I am able to get my very late December wrap up still within January. So took some time off, and then I was sick, and then I was just feeling so sad and so silly posting what I read videos while my world was literally burning apocalyptically. And every now and then I just get into these depressive moods of like, what am I doing with my life? Why do I keep doing this? What's it all for? What's the point? But I'll be honest, the biggest reason was I have had the worst breakout of my life all of January, really. And I had like the crustiest cold sore on the corner of my mouth. That's still there, but it's gotten a lot better. And I just refuse to be seen with that forever online. So like I said, it's always the little things in life, right? And I'm just trying to be nicer to myself. And I have been reading, as you can see. I've read so many books this year, but internally I do feel like I've been in a lull. Like I don't feel like I've been present in my reading. And that's terrible. I need to stop doing whatever it is that I'm doing to make myself not feel that way anymore. So I'm trying to be more present, both for myself in my own life, as well as on here. So I know that this is a December reading wrap up, but it's just one of my many resolutions that I am struggling but earnestly trying to keep. And since I'm like back on BookTube, I am gonna keep cranking this out and go straight into my roundup, my best books of 2024, best favorites. I don't know how to word it yet, and straight into my January wrap up and just keep going because I genuinely enjoy this still, and I sincerely want to talk to you all about all the books that I'm reading, good and bad. That's why I never upload books like my favorite books of the month, because I truly want to talk about it all, just in case a book that I don't like is a book that you might have liked, or a book that I didn't like is something that you liked, and we would never know about how we feel or thought about those books. Like, I don't want to let any book fall through the cracks. No book left behind. So thank you for watching. More uploads from me very soon. See you soon.